So today I want to talk about something a little different. I want to look at four women's charts from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills: Dorit, Erica, Garcelle, and Sutton. These four have astrological architectures that reveal four radically different strategies for surviving the same environment. Because here's what I think people missed about Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. That it's not just a reality TV show. It's not just drama. It's a long form pressure test. It's a space where vulnerability is punished and survival depends on how well you understand power, timing, and self protection. And these four women, they represent four completely different seasonal survival systems. You got two Cancer suns, Dorit and Erica, both born in high summer, both carrying that deep seasonal sensitivity, that instinct to protect the emotional core, but they armor that vulnerability in opposite ways. One survives through beauty, openness, and aesthetic reinvention. Kind of Erica too as well, but the other, Erica, survives more through performance, control, and emotional lockdown. Same season, entirely different defenses. Then you get Garcelle and Sutton, who are often grouped together socially, but astrologically could not be more different. Garcelle is a Sagittarius Sun, late autumn fire. She's oriented towards truth, freedom, and moral clarity. She speaks plainly because her chart supports it. Her honesty is expansive, forward facing, and unapologetic. Sutton, on the other hand, is a late degree Virgo Sun at the very end of summer. Her truth does not come from philosophical fire. It comes from analysis, observation, and precision. She doesn't declare the truth, she notices it, she catalogs it, she corrects it. And because her Virgo Sun sits at the crisis point of the season, her truth telling is anxious, meticulous, and impossible to turn off. They may stand together, but they arrive at truth from completely different seasonal mechanics. And here's the connective tissue that makes this group fascinating. All four women I'm talking about here share Scorpio, and Mercury. All four have deep autumn perception. All four see what's hidden. All four understand power, subtext, and unspoken motives. But the difference isn't what they see, it's what their charts allow them to do with what they see. So in this episode, we're breaking down each woman's chart, the seasonal mechanics, the emotional architecture, the survival strategies they rely on under pressure, and then we're looking at what happens when these four operating systems are forced to coexist in the same space. We're talking about Dorit's summer softness, protected by aesthetic reinvention. Erica's summer wound, armored by performance and control. Garcelle's autumn truth, rooted in emotional stability. And Sutton's late summer precision, colliding with social grace and winter level calculation. Four women, four seasons, four fundamentally different answers to the same question. How do you survive a space that profits from your exposure? Ready to get into it. Okay, so let's talk about what's actually going on with Dorit Kemsley. Because I think once you understand her seasonal architecture, and I mean really understand it, everything about her just kind of clicks into place. All right, so let's kind of like get the technical stuff out of the way. We're working with her birth date of July 14th, 1976, and most celebrity astrology databases uses 10:46 a.m. in Woodbridge, Connecticut. Think about Erica. Hey, you're from Connecticut, which gives us Sun at 22 degrees Cancer, Moon at 15 degrees Pisces, Libra rising at 21 degrees, Venus at 23 degrees Cancer, Mercury at 6 degrees Leo, Mars at 5 degrees Virgo, Jupiter at 24 degrees, Taurus, Saturn 4 degrees Leo. So she has a Cancer stellium, Sun, Venus, and her midheaven are all clustered there, which is already telling us something major about her emotional protection and home and identity. But what I think you need to know right away is that Dorit's not chaotic. She's perpetually unfinished. And I think that's a really, really important distinction to make. So let's kind of like start where she lives, seasonally speaking. Her Cancer Sun is at 22 degrees, which puts her in what I call high summer, not early summer freshness, high summer, maximum exposure, everything visible. The heat is relentless. And at that point in the season, you know what survival requires, not strength. It requires shelter, because this is what not Capricorn. This is what Cancer does at this degree. It doesn't go soft. I just talking about Kyle's thing about Capricorn. But Cancer, it doesn't go soft and nurturing in the fairy tale way people think. It armors through care. It protects vulnerability by building walls that look warm. So Dorit's core instinct, and I mean her absolute base operating system, is I must look safe, composed, and intact at all times. Which is why her emotional responses never come raw. They come wrapped in explanation, wrapped in reassurance, wrapped in the surface warmth and visual cohesion. She doesn't lead with feeling. She leads with containment that kind of looks like pleasant or pleasure. And then when you add in Venus and Cancer, and it's in late Cancer, around 25 degrees, everything deepens because now love itself is expressed as protection, as loyalty, as aesthetic comfort, as what I'd call emotional branding. Dorit bonds by curating safety. If the environment looks harmonious, the bond feels secure. That's why her style isn't just vanity, it's actually regulatory. Order on the outside, it steadies for her what's unsettled inside. But here's also where it gets interesting, because I think this is where the real Dorit architecture reveals itself. Her moon, which is her emotional body, her internal experience, is in Pisces at 15 degrees. And seasonally, that's late winter, early spring melt. That's pre-spring moment. And this is crucial because Pisces isn't spring growth, it's spring dissolution, it's thaw. It's everything loosening and flowing and losing its boundaries. So while her Cancer sun is building walls and creating shelter, her Pisces moon is dissolving structure from within. And you see the problem? She feels everything. She holds no firm boundary, holds no firm emotional boundary. She absorbs tone and mood and pressure like a sponge. And here, emotion is not going to resolve. It's going to drift. It's going to spread. It's going to saturate without crystallizing. And this is going to create what you see on the show all the time: emotional overwhelm without clear cause, confusion between intuition and anxiety, real difficulty holding firm positions. She feels deeply, genuinely, but she cannot anchor those feelings into definitive statements. They keep moving. She keeps talking. And that's the core of Dorit right there. And I think this is what you're watching when you watch her: a core seasonal mismatch. Her Cancer sun, it wants safety through structure. But her Pisces moon, it dissolves structure from the inside. So what does she do? She compensates. She over-articulates, she over-styles, she over-explains, not to manipulate, but to emotionally stay afloat. Dorit is always narrating because I think silence for her feels like free fall. And I want you to really sit with that for a second. Her verbosity, it isn't deflection, it's staying afloat. Cancer and Pisces, it's like, I can't even say the word, it's in my head, buoyancy, but I have this difficulty with being able to like see the word in my head, but like see it when it comes out like to like actually articulating it, it's like blah, blah, blah. The Cancer and Pisces systems, they stay above water by explaining, by contextualizing, by softening their edges, by adding emotional qualifiers. If she stops talking, I think the feeling sinks and she goes under. And now we can talk about her Libra rising. And that gives her the appearance of early autumn. This is the same illusion that kind of like Andy Cohen carries, but is softer and more explicitly aesthetic. Libra rising, it gives symmetry, fashion fluency, social grace, diplomatic instinct. It makes her seem composed, balanced, and intentional. But, and I think this is important, Libra rising is pre-reckoning autumn. The leaves are still on the trees. Nothing has fallen yet. Nothing has been cut away. And that is why Dorit often sounds like she's processing something, but never quite lands anywhere final. It's because she arranges, she balances, she considers all sides, but she doesn't conclude, because conclusion feels and requires winter. And here's what's really going with Dorit's chart. She has no dominant winter anchor. There's a missing season. There's no Capricorn spine, no Aquarius detachment, no true winter placement to harden her system when pressure arrives. So when things gets intense, she doesn't crystallize. She doesn't withdraw. She doesn't finalize. She redecorates the emotional room. Same house, different furniture. Her Mars in Virgo and Jupiter in Taurus, those are stabilizers, not drivers. They provide routine, material grounding, attention to logistics. Under stress, they keep her functioning. They can handle details, like maintain appearances, but Earth here supports the system. It doesn't like direct it. So action is careful and incremental and reactive, and it's just never truly decisive. So, like, what does this actually mean for how she operates in the world? Like, what role does she actually play? Dorit's not a breaker. She's not a closer. She's not a winter figure who delivers hard truth and walk away. She's a continuity agent. Her role in any system is to soften conflict, reframe discomfort, and keep things pleasant enough to continue. She doesn't metabolize crisis, she styles around it. And I think that's why she feels emotionally sincere, but structurally evasive, overwhelmed, but oddly unchanged, always mid-process. She's eternally almost there, almost understanding, almost deciding, almost changing. That almost is Pisces and Libra at work. They're liminal signs. They exist between states, not inside conclusions. And I want to kind of take this a little bit deeper because this is where her architecture becomes really visible. When Saturn transits hit her Pisces moon or when eclipses activate her Cancer placements, I think what happens is not clarity, but saturation. Pisces moon, we feel everything under pressure and we feel everything at once. We lose hierarchy between feelings, struggle to separate fear from intuition. Anxiety almost becomes like your atmosphere rather than situational. So you get Dorit's signature state: overwhelmed, articulate, sincere, and still unresolved. She's not hiding truth. I think she's unable to pin it down because emotion moves faster than meaning for her. And then when her Cancer Sun is activated by difficult transits, she doesn't get aggressive. She becomes more maternal, more concerned with tone, more invested in being understood, more sensitive to perceived hostility. Cancer under stress is not going to attack, it's going to protect the environment. And that's why Dorit often seems more focused on how something is said than what is actually happening, because safety precedes truth. And her Libra rising goes into overdrive during conflict. Careful phrasing, curated presentation, fashion is armor, diplomacy that feels circular, because Libra rising believes that the room can stay balanced, the system can survive. But balance without winter just produce nothing. Nothing tips, nothing ends, nothing resets. And this is where I think what it comes down to is that Dorit's chart does not naturally move into winter, and winter requires solitude, acceptance of loss, decisiveness without reassurance. And her placements, they all resist all four. So when the system demands consequence, she responds with clarification instead of closure, explanation instead of acceptance, reassurance instead of surrender. And this reads as avoidance to everyone watching, but internally, it feels like self-preservation. And you notice how she never fully unravels? That's Mars and Virgo and Jupiter and Taurus quietly preventing collapse. Even when she's emotionally flooded, she's still functioning, still handling logistics, still showing up. That creates the impression of stability, but it's not operational. No, actually, it's more operational. It's not psychological. And like, I think there's a bit of a core truth for Dorit that she's not hiding winter. I think she's just simply never learned how to live in it. Her system survives through warmth, beauty, narration, and emotional permeability. But winter would demand silence, loss, decisiveness, being misunderstood. And that season, more than any conflict, is what truly threatens her. She's living in an endless summer held together by spring emotion and autumn aesthetics. There's warmth, there's feeling, there's beauty, but there's no true seasonal ending. And without winter, nothing ever fully settles. And I think that's the read. Perpetually unfinished, but not because she's flawed, but because her chart was never built for reckoning. It was built for continuation through redesign. Now we talk about Miss Erica Jane. So Erica's Jane charts, it's not contradictory. I think it kind of looks like that way, and I think it definitely feels that way when you watch, or at least for me. But I think that once you understand what's actually happening seasonally, you realize her astrology is strategically split, and that split is doing exactly what it's designed to do. All right, so let me kind of start with the technical data, and then we'll unpack what it actually means. Erica um, Jane Girardi was born July 10th, 1971. And while we don't have her confirmed birth time, most astrology databases and practitioners use a chart that gives her Cancer rising, which makes sense when you look at how she operates, which gives us Sun and rising in Cancer, Moon in Aquarius, Mars in Aquarius, Venus at 0 degrees Cancer, Mercury in Leo, Jupiter in Scorpio, Saturn in Gemini, Pluto in Virgo. And this is where I kind of think you need to understand about her right away. Erica's chart places her between peak summer exposure and deep winter detachment. That's kind of the configuration. That's what produces someone who is highly visible, emotionally guarded, and structurally armored in a way that almost feel like militant and military. She's not cold by nature. I think she's cold by necessity. Well, let's start where she lives publicly. Her sun and her rising in Cancer, they root her in high summer. And I want to be very clear about what that means, because I think Cancer gets misunderstood as very soft and maternal and nurturing in like this gentle fairy tale way. That's early summer Cancer. Erica's not early summer. She's high summer Cancer, which is the moment when heat is at its most intense and exposure is unavoidable. Everything is visible. There's nowhere to hide. Vulnerability is maximum. And at that point, seasonally, Cancer doesn't go soft, it goes defensive. If you've ever looked into astrology, you know there's 3 decans for each sign, and this is kind of how I'm splitting it up. So high summer, it kind of says everything can see me, so I must protect what's inside. And I think that's why Erica's public presence feels guarded, controlled, fortified, rather than openly warm. Her armor is not performative, it's climatic. It's what you need to survive that level of exposure without disintegrating. And then with Cancer on her ascendant, her public face, her first instinct. She doesn't lead with expression. She leads with containment. Cancer rising functions like walls, like gates, like selective access only. And that's why trust is slow with her, why loyalty is rigid, and why perceived betrayal is absolutely unforgivable. Cancer rising does not negotiate safety, it enforces it. And now I want to kind of look at her Venus because I said 0 degrees. I think that's a root. That's critical. I want you to really hear this placement because it tells you something about how this early pattern is formed. 0 degrees is the very beginning of summer, the very start of the sign. This is when the attachment forms before defenses have fully hardened. It suggests deep emotional imprinting early in life. Love gets tied to security and survival and attachment patterns that predate conscious choice. This placement loves absolutely, but only inside the walls. Once those walls are breached, the response is not grief or negotiation or repair, it's withdrawal. Complete, immediate, and permanent. And now we kind of get to the split, the counter season, deep winter. This is what makes Erica reads as contradictory when she's actually just seasonally divided. Her moon and Mars in Aquarius, it places her emotional processing and instinctual action in deep winter. Not autumn cooling, deep winter. The coldest, most detached season in the zodiac. And Aquarius is not heartless. That's the wrong word. It's post-emotional. Winter Aquarius acts as what must be frozen so the system can continue. And this is where the Ice Queen persona comes from. Not as an effect, not as a performance, but as a regulatory mechanism. Because here's what you need to understand about Aquarius moon seasonally. It operates when feeling directly would be destabilizing, when objectivity is safer than vulnerability, when survival requires detachment. Erica's moon doesn't deny emotion, it abstracts it. Feelings are processed through logic for her, through principle, and through narrative control, which creates a woman who can endure public scrutiny without visible collapse, and she can maintain composure without moral pressure, and she can appear unbothered when internally she's taxed. It's not numbness, it's emotional like refrigeration, if that makes any sense. And then we look at her Mars in Aquarius at work. She has Mars in Aquarius, which is her instinctual response, her fight mechanism. She doesn't fight personally. It fights structurally. It fights ideologically. Displacement resists coercion, moral policing, emotional demands, frames as obligation. When challenged, Erica does not lash out emotionally like fire signs do. She goes cold, immovable, ideological. Aquarian Mars, it says, you do not get to tell me how to feel. Not as rebellion, but as a survival principle. And she has a core split between her summer body and a winter nervous system. And I think this is like a dynamic that we're watching when we watch Erica. Cancer Sun and Rising equals exposed, sensitive, self-protective. Aquarius Moon and Mars equals detached, frozen, unyielding. This creates a woman who feels deeply but shows little, bonds fiercely but disengages completely when threatened, appears emotionally inconsistent but is actually seasonally divided. Her system learned early, and I mean early. Look at that Venus placement. That warmth attracts danger. That cold ensures survival. That the only way to exist in maximum visibility is to freeze your emotional processing so completely that nothing can get through the walls. Then we look at where her Mercury's at. Her Mercury's in Leo. That's like a command of the stage type of placement. And it makes her it gives her performative command. This is high summer voice, loud, unapologetic, very declarative. It allows her to dominate narrative space, speak with authority regardless of content, perform confidence even under strain. Leo Mercury, it does not explain, it announces. And that's why her communication style reads as bold, theatrical, sometimes immovable. She's not looking for understanding. She's declaring her reality. And then her Jupiter in Scorpio, it gives her a late autumn depth, survival through intensity and loyalty. Saturn in Gemini provides late spring constraint, careful language, selective disclosure. Pluto in Virgo adds late summer control, perfectionism, bodily discipline, self-regulation. None of those placements soften the core split between summer exposure and winter processing. They reinforce containment. They add more walls, more discipline, more control mechanisms. I think this is why pressure doesn't melt her. Pressure's heat. Erica already lives in heat. She's built for high summer exposure. So when it becomes unbearable, when the scrutiny intensifies, when the moral judgment increases, she doesn't burn out. She freezes. That's why shame does not display it as remorse on cue for her. Why vulnerability does not arrive when the audience demands it. Why emotional reckoning feels postponed indefinitely. Winter Aquarius, it's never going to process on anyone else's timeline. It waits until the system is safe again. And if the system never becomes safe, it's never going to process publicly. And like in practice, and like the role that her seasonal architecture creates is the fact that I don't think she's here to be soft. I don't think she's here to be relatable. She's not here to perform vulnerability for comfort or connection. She's here to remain intact under conditions that would shatter most people. And that requires summer armor and winter nerves and absolute control over access. Because here's the thing about this configuration. It's not cruel, it's not sociopathic, it's not emotionally absent, it's seasonally survival oriented. She learned that emotional exposure in high summer gets you hurt. That warmth makes you visible to predators. That the only way to survive that level of heat and scrutiny is to freeze your nervous system so completely that nothing can destabilize the fortress. I don't think Erica Jane is emotionally absent. I think she's seasonally misaligned with what audience expects from public figures because we expect people under pressure to warm, soften, to vulnerably explain, to remorsefully process. That's what spring and autumn do, right? But that's not what summer does. She was built to survive exposure without disintegrating, and disintegration would mean melting, crying, breaking, explaining, and apologizing in a way that satisfies public hunger for emotional display. But her chart's not going to allow that. Not because she doesn't feel, but because feeling that publicly would threaten the entire structural integrity. I don't think she's here to be liked. I don't think she's here to be understood in the way the viewers want to understand her. I think she's here to remain intact. And her astrology shows you exactly how she does it. Summer shell, winter core, Leo voice, and walls that do not negotiate. That's Eric, strategically frozen, not broken, not heartless, just built to survive heat that would melt anyone without that Aquarius detachment holding the center. Okay, so we're obviously talking about Garcelle. I need you to understand something before we start. What Garcelle represents on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills is not just casting, it's not just diversity, it's the arrival of someone whose chart was built to hold ground that was never supposed to belong to her, and to do it with grace, truth, and optimism that refuses to die even when the season darkens. Her astrology is not about survival through armor like Erica's. It's about survival through rootedness, through speaking truth from a place so stable that nothing can uproot it, through maintaining freedom and joy even when the conditions say you shouldn't have either. And another personal thought, I just love Garcelle. I feel like she's very essential to the African American culture. Okay, in my eyes, I love her. I've always loved her. One of the first people I had a crush on. Love Garcelle, Miss Fanny. But going back to her chart. So Garcelle, she was born November 26, 1966 in Haiti. Without a confirmed birth time, we're working with her most reliable placement. So she has like her sun at like 4 degrees Sagittarius, her moon's in Taurus, Mercury's in Scorpio, Sagittarius. Da, da, da. Her rising sign is unconfirmed. There's speculation about her being Capricorn rising based off her like professional drive and executive energy. And honestly, that kind of tracks. But we don't need the rising sign to see what this chart does. The seasonal architecture is already clear. So here's the dynamic that defines Garcelle. Her sun and Venus in Sagittarius places her identity and love in late autumn. There's transition from autumn into winter, the moment when the year darkens, but the spirit refuses to contract. And her moon in Taurus roots her emotional base in late spring, the moment when growth is stable, beauty is grounded, when security is not just possible, but necessary. And this is not a contradiction. This is strategic seasonal placement. Her emotional foundation is late spring Taurus, stable, rooted, sensual, unshakable. But her expression, her voice, her identity, that's late autumn Sagittarius, free, optimistic, truth-seeking, expansive even as the light fades. What this creates is a woman who can speak with absolute freedom because her emotional ground cannot be moved. She doesn't speak from instability, hoping to find ground. She speaks from ground so solid that she can afford to be free. And I want to be very clear about what Taurus moon means seasonally, especially in the context that I'm describing. Black African American women having to be brilliant and resilient is an almost an anomaly just to survive, having to be who you were told to be while also being exceptional. Taurus moon is late spring. That's the season when roots have already taken hold, when growth is no longer fragile, when stability is not aspirational but actual. Emotionally, displacement does not waver. It does not destabilize easily. It cannot be uprooted by pressure, scrutiny, or hostility. This is the moon placement you need when conditions say that you should not be able to stand where you're standing. Because Taurus moon doesn't just endure, it roots. It finds emotional security through material stability and beauty, physical groundness and sensuality, loyalty and consistency, slow, deliberate trust. That's why Garcelle can walk into Real Housewives of Beverly Hills as the first Black housewife and not perform gratitude, apology, or explanation. Her emotional base is too stable to need external validation. She doesn't need the group to affirm her worth. She already knows it is rooted. And that's what makes this moon even more powerful, because Taurus moon loves luxury and beauty and elegance, not as a performance, but as a birthright. She doesn't need permission to enjoy the good life. She doesn't code switch her taste of comfort. Late spring says, I belong in beauty, I belong in ease. That's non-negotiable. Now let's get her sign. Late autumn truth telling. Her sun in Sagittarius at probably 3 to 4 degrees is a late autumn truth seeking at the very beginning of the sign. This is the moment when the fire ignites philosophy. I cannot say the word for some reason. When honesty becomes necessary, when optimism persists, despite evidence that things are darkening. Sagittarius Sun does not whisper truth. It does not apologize for perception. It does not soften reality to make others comfortable. Late autumn Sagittarius says, this is what I see. This is what's true. I will speak it with joy, even if you don't want to hear it. And in the context of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, a show that rewards strategic silence, careful alliances, perform niceness, Garcelle's Sagittarius Sun is disruptive. Not because she's trying to disrupt, but because her chart will not allow for her to lie just to belong. And this is someone whose identity is rooted in the freedom of thought and movement and optimism that refuses being cynical, and generosity of spirit even towards those who don't deserve it, and seeing truth telling as a spiritual practice. And with Venus also in Sagittarius, her love and her affection, they operate the same way. We see her, she loves freely. She doesn't contract her heart to fit the group's comfort level. She doesn't perform distance to seem strategic. She's generous, warm, expansive, and completely unbothered if that's not returned. And this is where it gets a little bit more interesting, because while her Sun and her Venus are an optimistic, freedom-loving Sagittarius, her Mercury, which is her mind, her communication, and her perception, is in Scorpio. Deep autumn, very strategic, perspective, and seeing what's hidden. Scorpio, Mercury at 15 to 16 degrees is not early investigative Scorpio. This is more deep autumn perception that is already seen enough to know how things work. And this is a placement that understands like power dynamics instinctively, and like who's lying and why, and what's hidden beneath performance, and when to speak and when strategic silence serves better. And I think this is why Garcelle can be optimistic and truthful Sagittarius without being naive. Her Mercury sees everything and she knows exactly what she's dealing with. She's not innocent about the dynamics on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. She just refuses to let those dynamics make her contract her spirit. Scorpio Mercury plus Sagittarius Sun, it creates someone who sees the darkness clearly, but chooses to speak from light anyway. Not because she doesn't understand the stakes, but because she does. And she refuses to let fear control her voice. Now, her Mars is at 1 to 2 degrees Libra, and that's critical. That's early autumn action, the moment when balance becomes necessary, when justice becomes the organizing principle, when fighting must be done with grace. So Libra Mars is diplomatic justice. It does not fight messily. It does not react impulsively. It does not lose composure even when provoked. She always seems like she's composed. Early autumn Mars says, I will fight for fairness. I will do it diplomatically, and I will not sacrifice my grace for your comfort. And I think that's why Garcelle can call out racism, microaggressions, double standards, and do it with such elegance that no one can accuse her, can't rightfully accuse her of being aggressive or angry. Not because she's performing palpability, but because her Mars naturally operates through balance and strategic timing. She doesn't need to yell to be heard. She doesn't need to perform rage to make her point. Libra Mars knows that power delivered with grace is way more effective than power delivered through chaos. And in the context of being the first Black housewife navigating a predominantly white cast, this Mars placement is survival architecture. It allows her to advocate for herself and others without giving anyone else the ammunition to dismiss her as being difficult. Then we get to her Jupiter is at 1 to 2 degrees Leo, and it's in retrograde. And I think that's fascinating because high summer Jupiter in the sign of royalty, but turned inward, is like basically what that is. Let me say that again. Okay. High summer Jupiter in the sign of royalty, but turned inward. Jupiter in Leo is naturally regal and generous and expansive and performative in the best way. It's the queen who knows her throne belongs to her. But a retrograde means this energy is internalized first, is refined privately before it gets expressed publicly, which suggests someone who's had to cultivate her own sense of authority and regality without external validation. She didn't wait for permission to feel royal. She claimed it internally first. And that's why her presence reads as inherent rather than performed. Because Leo Jupiter retrograde, it kind of says, my generosity, my warmth, my authority, those are mine. I refined them in private. No one gave them to me, so no one can take them away. And I think this is why this placement, it allows Garcelle to walk into any room, RHOBH, cast events, Hollywood spaces, predominantly white environments, and carry herself with absolute confidence. Not because she's performing confidence, but because her Jupiter already decided years ago that she belongs wherever she chooses to be. And then her Saturn is at 23 degrees, 23, 24 degrees Pisces, and it's also in retrograde. That's late winter discipline. This is the season when compassion must have boundaries, when spiritual openness requires structure, when being permeable to everyone's energy will destroy you. See, Pisces Saturn, it says, I am compassionate, I'm spiritually attuned, but I have learned privately, painfully, where to draw those lines. And retrograde kind of suggests that this lesson was internalized through experience. She probably had to learn the hard way that being open and kind and generous doesn't mean taking in everyone's chaos, and that spiritual maturity sometimes means saying no. That compassion for others cannot come at the expense of self-preservation. Actually makes me think about the very difficult moment she talked about when she had to like help her son went away when he was going through his own issues. This is the kind of placement that allows Garcelle to be warm and accessible without being exploited, to be kind without being naive, and to maintain spiritual grace while also protecting her energy. So let's kind of like talk about this chart, what it means in the context, like a little bit. I don't know, like because Garcelle, she's the first Black housewife on RHOBH. She's not the only. Now we have Boz, and I will be talking about her eventually. But like as somebody representing Black African American women who grew up in the throngs of like having to like just like the talk of having to be who you were told to be while also being brilliant and resilient and almost an anomaly just to survive. I think her chart is not built for assimilation. It's not built for code switching. It's not built for making herself smaller or more palatable or more digestive for white comfort. Her Taurus moon gives her the emotional stability to stand on ground that was never supposed to be hers. Her Sagittarius Sun gives her the freedom and optimism to speak truth even when it's uncomfortable. Her Scorpio Mercury gives her the strategic intelligence to know exactly what she's navigating. I see her Libra Mars giving her this diplomatic grace to fight for justice without losing her composure. And I see her Leo Jupiter giving her the internal regality that says, I belong here because I say I do. And her Pisces Saturn gives her the spiritual boundaries to be generous without being depleted. This is someone whose astrology prepared for her to be a groundbreaker, not through force or aggression, but through rootedness, through being so stable in who she is that no amount of microaggressions or exclusion or scrutiny can move her. And this is what I think is most powerful about Garcelle's chart in this context. She doesn't perform gratitude for being allowed into spaces. She doesn't shrink or code switch or perform palatability. And it's not because she's unaware of the dynamics. Her Scorpio Mercury is going to see everything. It's because her chart will not allow her to betray her own stability for belonging. Taurus Moon says, I'm rooted. I do not move for your comfort. The Sagittarius Sun says, I speak for truth. I do not lie for your approval. The Libra Mars says, I fight for justice. I do it with grace because that's more effective, not because I'm trying to be liked. This is a woman who knows her worth is not up for debate, who walks into RHOBH and treats herself like she belongs because she does, who doesn't wait for permission or validation or acceptance, who brings her full self, her Haitian roots, her Black beauty, her regality, her truth telling, and refuses to shrink to any of it. Like, I think that getting Garcelle is one of the biggest gets in Housewives history. I don't care what you say. Not just because she's talented or beautiful or successful, though she's all those things, but because her chart represents something the franchise desperately needed. Someone who cannot be moved from their truth. Someone whose emotional base is too stable to perform for the cameras. Someone whose optimism and generosity exist alongside clear-eyed perception and diplomatic strength. She's not here to make anyone comfortable. She's there to be fully herself. And her astrology shows you exactly how she does it. Late spring root, late autumn truth, early autumn grace, and an internal regality that says, I am the queen, not because you crown me, but because I crown myself. That's Garcelle, unshakable, free, strategic, kind, royal, and in my eyes, absolutely irreplaceable. I know she's left the franchise as of the point I'm talking, but I just love her so much, and I want to talk about her still, so I don't care. So Sutton Strack, the woman who somehow manages to be the most anxious person in the room and the one willing to say what everyone else is thinking. She's a Southern belle who will absolutely violate every rule of social etiquette if the situation demands moral clarity, the perfectionist who apologizes for being awkward while simultaneously refusing to back down. Her chart is not quirky by accident. It's architecturally split between late summer perfectionism, early autumn social grace, and midwinter ideological rebellion. And that split creates someone who is in constant internal tension between maintaining order and disrupting it when necessary. So Sutton Strack was born September 20th, 1971 in Augusta, Georgia. Without a confirmed birth time, we're working with her most reliable placements. Her rising sign is debated. Some say Sagittarius, which would explain her adventurous, outspoken energy, and others would say Virgo, which would double down on her perfectionism, but honestly, both track. But we don't need to see the rising to understand what her chart does. The seasonal architecture is already screaming. She has her sun at 27 degrees Virgo, her moon's at 5 to 6 degree Libra, Mercury's at Virgo, Venus is in Libra, Mars is in Aquarius, Jupiter's in Scorpio, Saturn's in Gemini retrograde at 5 degrees. But her Saturn at 27 degrees is critical. And I need you to really understand what this degree means seasonally. This is not midsummer Virgo. This is not even comfortable late summer Virgo. This is the very end of Virgo. Literally 1 degree before Libra, right at the edge where summer transitions to autumn. Seasonally, this is going to be your peak harvest anxiety time frame of the season, right? Because this is the moment where everything must be gathered, sorted, perfected, preserved, because if it's not done correctly, the entire season's work is lost. So this is Virgo at its most stressed, its most critical, its most unable to relax, because literally the time when Sutton entered into the world is for her through error, the time where the margin for error is literally zero. This is why it's 27 degrees Virgo. It kind of says everything must be exactly right or it all falls apart. Literally, all the season's work will be lost if it's not perfect. And I think this is why we see Sutton operating with this constant undercurrent of anxiety. At least I think she looks like she has a constant undercurrent of anxiety. She seems very meticulous about details, obsessed with etiquette, unable to let go of small infractions. Her sun is stationed at the crisis point of the harvest, where relaxing is not an option because perfection is the only way to survive. And this placement is not one that it doesn't just want order, it wants flawless execution. This is the person who notices when a seating arrangement is wrong, when someone's behavior violates social code, when something is off by even the smallest degree, not because she's trying to be difficult, but because her sun literally cannot rest until everything's corrected. She has her Mercury in Virgo at 14 degrees, and I think this reinforces it. It makes her like almost like a precise instrument. It to late summer Mercury in his home sign, it creates a mind that kind of operates like this precise instrument. Someone who will analyze constantly, notice discrepancies immediately, someone who cannot ignore errors or contradictions, who will remember everything and will communicate with exactness and details. Typically, when they do flashbacks on the show, if Sutton has recalled something, she typically recalls it pretty accurately, even when I don't think she's right. And I think this is why she can remember specific conversations, dates, infractions months later. Her Mercury does not let information go. It catalogs, cross-references, and stores everything for future analysis. And when combined with her late summer sun, this creates someone whose identity is rooted in getting things right. Not approximately right, not just close enough, but exactly, precisely, flawlessly right. But we can kind of see where her tension starts. Because while her sun and Mercury are in anxious, perfectionist, late summer Virgo, her moon and Venus are in early autumn Libra, which is the season of balance, beauty, social grace, and harmonious performance. So her moon is at 5 to 6 degrees Libra, and this is her emotional base. Early autumn moon is a sign that needs social harmony and approval, diplomatic interactions, aesthetic, beauty and refinement. This is the Southern Belle energy we see from her. This is the emotional conditioning that says you must be gracious, you must be polite, you must maintain social harmony even when uncomfortable. Libra moon does not want conflict. It wants elegance, charm, mutual respect. And Venus at 2 degrees Libra, this is also very, very early autumn, right at the beginning of the sign, is going to reinforce this. Venus in Libra is a sign that loves through beauty and case. harmonious environments, social grace, and manners, which is why we see Sutton obsessed with fashion, art, culture, hosting, etiquette. It's not superficial, it is like her regulating her emotions through her aesthetics. See, Libra Moon Venus, it finds safety in beauty and social grace. When the environment is elegant and interactions are polite, I think she can breathe easier. But let's get to her major split. So her Sun and her Mercury, they want perfection through analysis and correction. Her Moon and her Venus, they want harmony through beauty and diplomacy, which is going to create someone who is desperate to maintain social grace, unable to ignore when something is wrong, constantly torn between being polite and being precise, anxious about both disrupting harmony and allowing errors to stand. I think this is why Sutton seems so uncomfortable, at least to me, when she calls people out, because I don't think she's naturally confrontational. Her Libra Moon, excuse me, it wants everyone to like her and to get along. But her Virgo Sun literally cannot let inaccuracies or injustice go uncorrected. So she kind of does this awkward thing where she apologizes while refusing to back down, where she seems nervous while also being incredibly precise about what she's observed, where she wants harmony, but she cannot sacrifice truth for it. And now we can get to why Sutton can't just stay quiet and be the perfect Southern belle, even though I think her moon desperately wants her to. She got a little winter rebellion, her Aquarius Mars. It's at 13 degrees, and it's basically in midwinter action. This is not early winter experimental Aquarius. This is deep winter ideological Aquarius that has already decided what principles matter and will not compromise them for social comfort. See, Aquarius Mars, it does not fight personally or emotionally. It's going to be fighting for principle, for fairness, for what's objectively right, even if it's socially awkward. Midwinter Mars says, I don't care if this makes me uncomfortable or unpopular. This is wrong, and I'm saying so. Which is why I think Sutton will absolutely violate Southern Belle protocol, if you want to call it that, when moral clarity demands it. Why I think she'll call out certain things when it makes everyone else at the table uncomfortable. While she'll point out double standards even when her Libra moon is screaming at her to just smile and let it go. Because I think her Mars, we call it a myth, it refuses to be polite when silence would be complicit. And then that combination with her Libra moon, desperate for social harmony, with her Aquarius Mars, willing to destroy social harmony for principle, it creates what I'm going to call a signature Sutton dynamic, okay? Where she seems terrified of conflict while at the same time walking straight into it. I really, really think she hates confrontation. Her moon is miserable doing it. It has to be. But her Mars won't let her stay silent when something violates her principles. Now, I think her main placement that makes Sutton, because to me, she just seems so nervous, so apologetic, so seemingly uncertain, even when she's being incredibly precise and accurate, is she has Saturn at 5 degrees Gemini retrograde. This is late spring discipline turned inward. Saturn in Gemini, it creates anxiety around communication, the fear of saying the wrong thing, hyper awareness of how words will be received. And retrograde means this anxiety was internalized early and it operates as a constant self monitoring. So, this placement produces someone who will second guess their own communication constantly, fear being misunderstood or dismissed, apologize preemptively before speaking, rehearsing every conversation in their head, remembering every time they said something wrong. And I think this is why, again, she seems so anxious when she speaks, why she qualifies everything, why she apologizes even when she's right. Her Saturn, I think, is terrified of verbal mistakes, social missteps, of being perceived as incorrect or inappropriate. But the cruel irony is her Virgo Mercury is precise. She's not actually saying things wrong. She's usually saying things right, often more accurately than anyone else in the conversation, like I said earlier. When they flash back, typically what she's recalled is way stronger than what I actually recall what they said. But I usually watch them on a little screen to the side of my iPad. Anyway, so you get this fascinating dynamic where she delivers incredibly accurate, detailed observations while simultaneously apologizing for them, where she's right, but she acts like she might be wrong, where her precision is undermined by her own anxiety about that precision. Now let's look at her Jupiter in Scorpio. Her Jupiter is in Scorpio at 27 to 28 degrees. So Scorpio is like late autumn, almost winter. This is deep, intense, transformative expansion. Jupiter in Scorpio, it doesn't do anything surface level. It wants depth, truth, emotional honesty, and it will go to uncomfortable places to find it. And I think this is why Sutton probably can't do like small talk or superficial relationships, why she bonds so deeply with Garcelle and Crystal, why she's willing to have uncomfortable conversations about race, class, privilege, topics most of the cast would probably avoid. Late autumn Jupiter, it says, if we're going to go deep, let's actually go deep. I'm not interested in pretending. This placement also explains why she can be so generous. Jupiter in Scorpio gives abundantly, but expects emotional honesty in return. She'll support you, defend you, show up for you, but she needs that reciprocated depth and loyalty. Surface level alliances won't satisfy this Jupiter. So, let's talk about why she reads as quirky, awkward, neurotic, because it's not a personality quirk. It's the result of being seasonally misaligned in multiple directions simultaneously. I think her chart is trying to maintain perfect order, late summer Virgo, perform social grace, early on Libra, rebel for principle, midwinter Aquarius, while constantly anxious about communication, Saturn retrograde in Gemini. She's a perfectionist who disrupts perfection for justice, a Southern belle who violates etiquette for honesty, the anxious communicator who cannot stop speaking uncomfortable truths, the woman who wants everyone to like her while refusing to compromise her principles for likability. This creates someone who seems constantly uncomfortable in her own skin, not because she lacks confidence, but because her chart is pulling her in 4 different seasonal directions at once. And now I kind of want to talk about why Sutton and Garcelle work so well together, because their charts are actually architecturally complementary. Garcelle's Taurus moon gives her unshakable emotional grounding. Sutton's Libra moon needs that stability because her own emotional base is more anxious and socially oriented. Garcelle's Sagittarius Sun speaks truth with optimistic freedom. Sutton's Virgo Sun speaks truth with anxious precision. Together, I think they both cover truth-telling from both angles, clarity and accuracy. Garcelle's Libra Mars fights with diplomatic grace. Sutton's Aquarius Mars fights for ideological principle. They both care about justice, but approach it from complementary angles. And critically, I think that Garcelle's groundedness gives Sutton permission to be bold. When Sutton has someone stable beside her, her Aquarius Mars can engage more freely because her Libra moon feels less isolated. She's not alone in the fight, so the social risk feels more bearable. They're both truth tellers, but Garcelle's rootedness balances Sutton's anxiety. Garcelle stands still. Sutton circles around the truth until she finds the exact right angle. Together, I think it kind of makes them unstoppable. See, Sutton's drag, she's not quirky by choice. She's seasonally fragmented in a way that creates constant internal negotiation between perfection, grace, rebellion, and anxiety. She wants order, but will disrupt it for principles. She wants harmony, but cannot ignore injustice. She wants to be liked, but will not compromise truth for approval. She's terrified of saying the wrong thing, but her precision won't let her stay silent when others are actually wrong. This is a woman whose late summer sun says everything must be perfect, whose early autumn moon says everything must get along, whose midwinter Mars says not if it means sacrificing what's right, and whose retrograde Saturn says, but what if I'm wrong about all of this? She's the anxious perfectionist who cannot stop telling the truth. The Southern belle who will absolutely violate every rule of etiquette when justice demands it. The woman who apologizes for being awkward while simultaneously being the most morally clear person in the room. And I think that's Sutton. Precise, gracious, rebellious, anxious, and absolutely essential to any conversation about what's actually happening beneath the performance. She sees everything. She says it anyway, and she apologizes the entire time. Not because she's wrong, but because her chart won't let her be comfortable with being right while being right. And honestly, I think that discomfort is kind of what makes her trustworthy. She's not performing clarity. She's genuinely wrestling with it and telling you what she finds, even when it costs her the harmony that I think her moon desperately wants. And I think that's kind of integrity. Seasonal, anxious, certainly awkward, but integrity nonetheless. Okay, before I dive into the ending, I want to correct something from the intro. I said all 4 women have Scorpio Mercury, and that's not true. Only Garcelle has Scorpio Mercury. Dorit and Erica both have Leo Mercury, and Sutton has Virgo Mercury. That distinction actually matters enormously for understanding how differently they perceive and communicate. So I apologize for saying that. When you put Dorit, Erica, Garcelle, and Sutton in the same room, when you force these 4 wildly different seasonal operating systems to coexist in the same high-pressure environment, you don't just get conflict. You get a masterclass in how different astrological architectures respond to the same threat. Because that's what Real Housewives of Beverly Hills is fundamentally. It's a threat assessment. It's a space where vulnerability is currency, exposure is violence, and truth-telling can get you exiled. And these 4 women navigate that space in ways that are so seasonally specific, so astrologically predetermined, that I feel like once you see it, you kind of can't unsee it. Dorit survives through beauty and aesthetic reinvention. Her Cancer sun makes her deeply sensitive, deeply vulnerable. But her Pisces moon gives her an almost mystical capacity for emotional shapeshifting. She can feel what's needed and become it. Her Leo Mercury communicates through presentation, performance, authority. Not performance as in fake, but performance as in I will curate my presentation so carefully that you will never see the actual wound. Her summer heart feels everything. Her mutable water moon can adapt to any emotional container. And the protection looks like couture, like accent shifts, like constant reinvention. She doesn't hide. She just makes sure you're looking at the beautiful surface instead of the tender interior. And Erica survives through armor and emotional shutdown. She's also a Cancer sun. Same high summer vulnerability, same deep sensitivity, but her Aquarius moon needs detachment, needs to not be consumed by emotional demand. It needs intellectual distance from the feeling. And her Leo Mercury gives her commanding communication that controls every narrative, every access point, every piece of information. So she builds this impenetrable performance of strength. She becomes Erica Jane, right? Untouchable, invincible, completely inaccessible. She survives by making sure no one can touch the actual wound. Probably not even herself when I think about it. Garcelle, she survives through truth rooted in unshakable ground. Her Sagittarius sun won't let her lie just to belong. Her Taurus moon gives her emotional stability so deep that she doesn't need the group's approval to feel secure. Her Scorpio Mercury, it sees power dynamics, hidden motives, strategic positioning, the only one of the four with this deep autumn perception. But instead of building armor or aesthetic protection, she just speaks it plainly. She survives by refusing to betray her own truth. She's late autumn freedom on late spring ground. She can afford to be free because her foundation can't be moved. And Sutton survives through perfectionism and through anxious precision. Her Virgo sun at 27 degrees is late summer harvest crisis. Everything must be gathered, sorted, corrected perfectly, or it all falls apart. Her Libra moon desperately needs social grace and harmony. Her Virgo Mercury cannot ignore errors, violations, or inaccuracies. It catalogs every discrepancy compulsively. And her Aquarius Mars won't let her stay silent when principles are violated, even though her moon is screaming at her to just keep the peace. She's late summer anxiety, trying to maintain early autumn grace, while midwinter rebellion keeps forcing her to disrupt both. She tells the truth because her precision won't let her ignore what's wrong. But she apologizes the entire time because her moon hates conflict and her Saturn retrograde in Gemini is terrified of saying the wrong thing. And here's what happened when you put them together. The two Cancer suns, Dorit and Erica, they recognize each other's vulnerability, even though they protect it differently. And that's why when they're friends at times, it makes sense. They're both high summer softness trying to survive in a space that punishes softness. They understand each other's need for protection, even if Dorit's protection looks like fluid adaptation and Erica's looks like a total shutdown. But Sutton and Garcelle, they're not the same at all. People think they're aligned because they're both truth tellers, but their reasons for telling truth and being truth tellers are completely different. Garcelle, I think, tells the truth from late autumn Sagittarius clarity. She speaks because her sun won't allow her again to lie to belong. She's optimistic, free, unbothered by consequences because her Taurus moon gives her such a solid emotional ground that she genuinely doesn't need external validation. Her Scorpio Mercury, it sees beneath the surface. Power dynamics, hidden agendas, what people really want. Her truth telling is rooted in freedom and strategic clarity. And Sutton tells the truth from late summer Virgo perfectionist precision. She speaks because her Virgo Mercury literally cannot ignore errors, violations, inaccuracies. She's not seeing hidden power dynamics like Garcelle. She's seeing factual discrepancies, breaches of order, things that are objectively wrong. She's anxious, apologetic, deeply uncomfortable with confrontation, but her Mars won't let her stay silent when something is objectively incorrect. Her truth telling is rooted in correction, not freedom. She hates that she has to say it, but her chart won't let her not say it. So when they align, it's not because they have the same seasonal operating system, it's because Garcelle's unshakable Taurus moon ground gives Sutton's anxious Virgo sun, Libra moon permission to speak. Garcelle stands still and unbothered. And Sutton can kind of orbit around that stability while delivering her precise observations. Garcelle's rootedness balances Sutton's anxiety. And the real fault line isn't summer versus autumn, it's vulnerability versus precision. Dorit and Erica need people to respect their performance, to not name what's beneath the armor, to allow the protective presentation to stand unchallenged. They're both trying to survive by controlling what you see of their summer vulnerability. And they both have Leo Mercury. They communicate through authority, performance, declarative narrative control. Neither explains timidly. But Sutton's Virgo Mercury cannot let inaccuracy stand. She sees discrepancies between what people perform and what's actually true. And her late summer sun is in crisis mode about it. everything must be corrected. Everything must be precise. She's not trying to be cruel. She's trying to restore order to chaos. And Garcelle's Sagittarius Sun can't pretend. She sees through the performance to the truth underneath. And her Scorpio Mercury gives her X-ray vision into motive and power. And her chart won't allow her to participate in the friction, even when participation would be kinder. So you get this dynamic where the two Cancer suns are trying to maintain carefully constructed protection, and Sutton is compulsively correcting the errors in their presentation, and Garcelle is calmly refusing to pretend she doesn't see what she sees, not because anyone is malicious, but because their seasonal architectures make certain strategies impossible. But I think there's a little bit of a deeper pattern because I don't think they all see the same thing. Dorit and Erica, both Leo Mercury, communicate through performance, authority, control, narrative. They're focused on what's being presented and how to manage it. In Garcelle, Scorpio Mercury, it sees the power, motive, subtext, what's hidden beneath the performance. She's the only one with the deep autumn perception. And in Sutton, Virgo Mercury, it sees at errors, inconsistencies, violations of order. She's cataloging what doesn't add up. Different perception, different communication styles, different survival responses. And I think that's why astrology matters. Because when you understand these women's charts, when you see the seasonal mechanics, the specific placements that determine how they move through the world, you stop judging them for their strategies. You stop asking, why doesn't Erica just be vulnerable? Or why can't Dorit just be herself? Or why is Sutton so anxious? Or how can Garcelle be so unbothered? Because the answer is their charts tell them what's possible. The season that you came into the world, if y'all don't believe that matters, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. If you think that the seasons don't matter to who you are as a person, okay, bye. See you later. No offense, but Erica's Cancer Sun Aquarius Moon configuration makes vulnerability feel like drowning and detachment feel like survival. She can't just be vulnerable the way Dorit can because Erica's Moon needs air, it needs distance, it needs to not be consumed. But then Dorit's Cancer Sun Pisces Moon gives her the ability to be emotionally available while remaining fluid, adaptive, hard to pin down. The aesthetic reinvention isn't deception, it's survival architecture that makes her specific chart available. Garcelle's Sagittarius Sun, Taurus Moon, gives her the rare combination of truth-telling, freedom, and unshakable emotional stability. Garcelle's not just confident, her chart literally won't let her betray her truth for belonging, and her Scorpio Mercury sees what others miss. And in Sutton's Virgo Sun, Libra Moon, it makes precision feel necessary, but social harmony feel equally essential. Sutton's not anxious for no reason. Her late summer sun is in permanent harvest crisis mode, and her early autumn moon needs everyone to get along. And those two are in constant tension. Add Aquarius Mars, and she can't stay silent when principles are violated. Add Saturn retrograde in Gemini, and she's terrified of every word she says. She's architecturally built for uncomfortable truth telling. None of this is random. None of this is choice. This is seasonal architecture. And what does Real House of Beverly Hills does? What this specific group of women reveals is how those different architectures collide when forced into the same space. What happens when high summer vulnerability meets late summer precision meets late autumn truth telling? When performance armor meets perfectionist correction meets unshakable ground? When four women with completely different perception systems and survival strategies have to coexist? And the answer is exactly what you see on screen. Alliance and fracture, recognition and rejection, moments of genuine connection when their seasonal mechanics align, and brutal conflict when their survival strategies fundamentally oppose each other. The two summer suns, Dorit and Erica, understand each other's vulnerability and need for protection. The late summer precision, Sutton, and late autumn truth, Garcelle, create an unlikely alliance, not because they're the same, but because Garcelle's stability gives Sutton's anxiety somewhere to anchor. And the conflicts happen when Sutton's compulsive correction or Garcelle's unbothered honesty threatens the carefully constructed armor that Dorit and Erica need to survive their summer softness. But now you know why. Now you see the mechanics. Now you understand that every alliance, every conflict, every moment of connection or betrayal is written in the seasonal patterns they were born with. Dorit, Erica, Garcelle, Sutton, high summer protection, high summer armor, late autumn truth, late summer anxious precision. Four different answers to the same impossible question. How do you protect yourself without losing yourself? How do you survive without betraying who you are? Their charts show you exactly why and how and what it cost. I think that's kind of it for this episode. Four women, four different relationships to summer and autumn, four completely different survival architectures, navigating the same brutal landscape. I think now you know how to see it. Until next time.